Okay, welcome everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Humanities Team and Evolution Revolution, and we are reading Conversations with God, Book 3, and I think we're coming really close to the end of it. We won't finish it today, but and of course it's by Neil Donald Walsh. And Linda, would you like to go ahead and start reading?
Absolutely.
All right, then. Everybody should go on mute unless you're talking.
Please. Yeah, it's real distracting when I'm reading to hear clicking and popping and stuff in the background. Okay, this is chapter 20, and I'm just going to read the last 2 lines out of 19 to give us a transition. Neil says, "You have to go?" And God says, "This book is getting very long." Chapter 20. Wait, hold it. You can't quit now. I have more questions about ETs. Are they someday going to appear here on Earth to save us? Will they rescue us from our own madness by bringing us new technologies to control the planet's polarities, clean our atmosphere, harness our sun's energy, regulate our weather, cure all disease, and bring us a better quality of life in our own little nirvana? You may not want that to happen. Hebes know this. They know that such an intervention would only subjugate you to them, making them your gods, rather the gods to whom you now claim to be subjugated. The truth is, you're subjugated to no one. And this is what the beings from highly advanced cultures would have you understand. If, therefore, they would share with you some technologies, these would be given in a way and at a rate which would allow you to recognize your own powers and potentials, not those of another. Similarly, if Hebes were to share with you some teachings, these too would be shared in a way and at a rate that would allow you to see the greater truths and your own powers and potentials, and not make gods of your teachers. Too late. We've already done that. Yes, I've noticed. Which brings us to one of our greatest teachers, the man called Jesus. Even those who did not make him a god have recognized the greatness of his teachings. Yeah, teachings which have been largely distorted. Was Jesus one of these Hebes, a highly evolved being? Do you think he was highly evolved? Yes, as was Buddha and Lord Krishna and Moses, Babaji, Sai Baba, and Paramahansa, Yogananda for that matter. Indeed, and many others you have not mentioned. Well, in book 2, you hinted that Jesus and these other teachers may have come from outer space, that they may have been visitors here sharing with us the teachings and wisdoms of highly evolved beings. So it's time to let the other shoe fall. Was Jesus a spaceman? You're all spacemen. What does that mean? You are not natives of this planet you now call home. We aren't? No. The genetic stuff of which you are made was placed on your planet deliberately. It didn't just show up there by accident. The elements that have formed your life didn't combine themselves through some process of biological serendipity. There was a plan involved. There is something much larger going on here. Do you imagine that the 1,000,000,001 biochemical reactions it has taken to cause life as you know it to appear on your planet all occurred haphazardly? Do you see this outcome as simply a fortuitous chain of random events producing a happy result by chance? No, of course not. I agree. There was a plan, God's plan. Good, because you are right. It was all my idea, and it was all my plan and my process. So what then? You're saying you're a spaceman? Where have you traditionally looked when you've imagined yourself to be talking to me? Up. I've looked up. Why not down? I don't know. Everybody always looks up to the heavens. From where I came? I guess, yes. So does that make me a spaceman? I don't know. Does it? And if I am a spaceman, would that make me any less a god? Well, based on what most of us say you can do, no, I guess not. And if I am a god, does that make me any less a spaceman? Well, that would depend on our definitions, I guess. What if I'm not a man at all, but rather a force, an energy in the universe that is the universe, and that is, in fact, all that is? What if I am the collective? Well, that is, in fact, what you've said you are. In this dialogue, you've said that. Indeed, I have, but do you believe it? Yes, I think I do, at least in the sense that I think God is all that is. Good. Now, do you think that there are such things as what you call spacemen? You mean beings from outer space? Yes. Yes, I do. I've always believed that, and now here, you've told me there are, so I surely believe it. And are these beings from outer space a part of the all that is? Well, yes, of course. And if I am all that is, wouldn't that make me a spaceman? Yes, well, but by that definition, you are also me. Bingo. Yes, but you've danced away from my question. I asked you if Jesus was a spaceman. And I think you know what I mean. I mean, was he a being from outer space or was he born here on Earth? Your question, once again, assumes an either or. Think outside the box. Reject either or. Consider both and. Are you saying Jesus was born on Earth but has spaceman blood, so to speak? Who was Jesus' father? Joseph? Yes, but who is said to have conceived him? Well, some people believe that it was an immaculate conception. They say that the Virgin Mary was visited by an archangel. Jesus was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary. Do you believe this? I don't know what to believe about that. Well, if Mary was visited by an archangel, where do you imagine the angel would have come from? From heaven. Did you say from the heavens? No, I said from heaven, another realm, from God. I see. And did we not just agree that God is a spaceman? Not exactly. We agreed that God is everything, and that since spacemen are a part of everything, God is a spaceman in the same sense that God is us, all of us. God is everything. God is the collective. Good. So this archangel who visited Mary came from another realm, a heavenly realm. Yes, a deep realm within yourself, because heaven is within you. I didn't say that. Well then, a realm within the inner space of the universe. No, I didn't say that either, because I don't know what that means. Then from where? A realm in outer space? You're playing with words now. I'm doing the best I can. I'm using words, in spite of their awful limitations, to get as close to as I can to an idea, a concept of things, which in truth cannot be described in the limited vocabulary of your language or understood within the limits of your present level of perception. I am seeking to open you to new perceptions by using your language in a new way. Okay, so you're saying that Jesus was fathered by a highly evolved being from some other realm, and thus he was human, but also a he? There have been many highly evolved beings walking your planet, and there are many today. You mean there are aliens among us? I see that your work in newspapers, radio talks, and television has served you well. How do you mean? You can find a way to sensationalize anything. I didn't call highly evolved beings aliens, and I didn't call Jesus an alien. There is nothing alien about God. There are no aliens on earth. We are all one. If we are all one, no individuation of us is alien to itself. Some individuation of us, that is, some individual beings, remember more than others. The process of remembering, reuniting with God, or becoming once again one with the all, with the collective, is a process you call evolution. You are all evolving beings. Some of you are highly evolved. That is, you remember more. You know who you really are. Jesus knew it and declared it. Okay, so I get that we're going to do a word dance on the Jesus thing. Not at all. I will tell you outright, the spirit of that human you call Jesus was not of earth. That spirit simply filled a human body, allowed itself to learn as a child, become a man, and self-realized. He was not the only one to have done this. All spirits are not of this earth. All souls come from another realm, then enter the body. You are not souls self-realized in a particular lifetime. Yet not all souls self-realize in a particular lifetime. Jesus did. He was a highly evolved being, what some of you have called a god, and he came to you for a purpose, on a mission, to save our souls. In a sense, yes, but not from everlasting damnation. There is no such thing as you have conceived it. His mission was, and is, to save you from not knowing and never experiencing who you really are. His intention was to demonstrate that by showing you what you can become, indeed what you are, if you will only accept it. Jesus sought to lead by example. That is why he said, I am the way and the life. Follow me. He didn't mean follow me in the sense that you would all become his followers, but in the sense that you would all follow his example and become one with God. He said, I am the Father. I and the Father are one, and ye are my brethren. He couldn't have put it more plainly. So Jesus did not come from God. He came from outer space. Your mistake is in separating the two. You keep insisting on making a distinction, just as you insist on making a separation and a distinction between humans and God. And I tell you, there is no distinction. Okay. Can you tell me a few final things about beings from other worlds before we end? What do they wear? How do they communicate? And please don't say this is still all about idle curiosity. I think I have demonstrated that there may be something we can learn here. All right. Briefly then. In highly evolved cultures, beings see no need to be clothed, except when some kind of covering is required to protect them from the elements or conditions over which they have no control, and when ornaments are used to indicate some rank or honor. A Hebe would not understand why you wear total body coverings when you do not have to. She certainly wouldn't understand the concept of shame or modesty, and could never relate to the idea of coverings to make oneself prettier. To a Hebe, there should be nothing more beautiful than the naked body itself, and so the concept of wearing something on top of it, somehow render it more pleasing or attractive, would be utterly incomprehensible. Equally incomprehensible would be the idea of spending most of one's time in boxes, which you call buildings and houses. Hebes live in the natural environment and would only stay inside of a box if their environment became inhospitable, which it rarely does, since highly evolved beings, civilizations, create, control, and care for their environments. Hebes also understand that they are one with their environment, that they share more than space with their environments, but also share a mutually dependent relationship. A Hebe would never understand why you would damage or destroy that which is supporting you, and so can only conclude that you do not understand that it is your environment which supports you, that you are beings of very limited observational skills. For communication, a Hebe uses his first level of communication, the aspect of his being, which you would call feelings. Hebes are aware of their feelings and the feelings of others, and no attempt is ever made by anyone to hide feelings. Hebes would find it self-defeating and therefore incomprehensible to hide feelings, and then complain that no one understands how they feel. Feelings are the language of the soul, and highly evolved beings understand this. It is the purpose of communication in a society of Hebes to know each other in truth. A Hebe therefore cannot and could never understand your human concept called lying. To be successful in getting one's way by communicating an untruth would be for a Hebe a victory so hollow as to render it not a victory at all, but a staggering defeat. Hebes do not tell the truth. Hebes are the truth. Their whole beingness comes from what is so and what works. And Hebes learned long ago, in a time beyond memory, when communication was still accomplished through guttural utterances, that untruth does not work. Yet you have not learned this in your society. On your planet, much of society is based on secrecy. Many of you believe it is what you keep from each other, not what you tell to each other, that makes life work. Secrecy has thus become your social code, your code of ethics. It is truly your secret code. Now, this is not true of all of you. Ancient cultures, for example, and your indigenous people do not live by such a code. And many individuals in your present society have refused to adopt these behaviors. Yet your government runs by this code. Your businesses adopt it. And many of your relationships reflect it. Lying about things large and small has become so accepted by so many that they even lie about lying. Thus, you have developed a secret code about your secret code. Like the fact that the emperor is wearing no clothes. Everybody knows it, but nobody's talking about it. You even try to pretend it's not so, and in this, you are lying to yourself. You've made this point before. I'm repeating in this dialogue the essential points, the main points, if you truly are to change things as you say you wish to do. And I will say it again. the differences between human cultures and highly evolved cultures is that highly evolved beings, 1, observe fully, and 2, communicate truthfully. They see what works and say what's so. This is another tiny but profound change which would immeasurably improve your planet, life on your planet. And this is not, by the way, a question of morals. There is no moral imperatives in a Hebe society. And that would be a concept equally as puzzling as lying. It is simply a matter of what is functional, of what brings benefit. So Hebes have no morals? Well, not as you understand them. The idea of some group devising a set of values by which individual Hebes are called upon to live would violate their understanding of what works, which is that each individual is the sole and final arbitrator of what is and is not appropriate behavior for them. The discussion is always around what works for a Hebe society, what is functional and produces benefit for all, not around what humans would call right and wrong. But isn't that the same thing? Haven't we simply called what works right and what doesn't work as wrong? You have attached guilt and shame to those labels, concepts equally foreign to Hebes, and you have labeled an astonishing number of things wrong, not because they don't work, but simply because you imagine them to be inappropriate, sometimes not even in your eyes, but in the eyes of God. You have thus constructed artificial definitions of what works and what doesn't, definitions having nothing to do with what's really so. Honestly expressing one's feelings, for example, is often deemed by human society as wrong. Such a conclusion could never be arrived at by a Hebe, since precise awareness of feelings facilitates life in any community or cluster. So as I said, a Hebe would never hide feelings or find it socially correct to do so. It would be impossible in any event because a Hebe receives vibes, actual vibrations from other beings, which make their feelings plain enough. Just as you can sometimes feel the air when you walk into a room, a Hebe can feel what another Hebe is thinking and experiencing. Actual utterances, what you would call words, are rarely, if ever, used. This telepathic communication occurs between all highly evolved sentient beings. Indeed, it could be said that the degree to which a species or a relationship between members of the same species has evolved is demonstrated by the degree to which beings require the use of words to convey their feelings, desires, or information. And before you ask the question, yes, human beings can develop, and some have developed the same capacity. Thousands of years ago, in fact, it was normal. You have since regressed to the use of primal utterances, noises, actually to communicate. But many of you are returning to a clearer form of communication, more accurate and more elegant. This is especially true between loved ones. Emphasizing a major truth, caring creates communication. Where there is deep love, words are virtually unnecessary. The reverse of this axiom is also true. The more words you have to use with each other, the less time you must be taking to care for each other, because caring creates communication. Ultimately, all real communication is about truth. And ultimately, the only real truth is love. That is why, when love is present, So is communication. And when communication is difficult, it is a sign that love is not fully present. Wow, that is beautifully put. I might say beautifully communicated. Thank you. To summarize then, the model for life in a highly evolved society. Beings live in clusters, or what you would call small intentional communities. These clusters are not further organized into cities or nations or states, but each interacts with the others on a co-equal basis. There are no governments as you would understand them, and no laws. There are councils or conclaves, usually of elders, and there are what could be best translated into your language as mutual agreements. These have been reduced to a triangular code of awareness, honesty, and responsibility. Highly evolved beings have decided long ago that this is how they choose to live together. They've made this choice based not on a moral structure or spiritual revelation that some other being or group has brought forth, but rather on simple observation of what is so and what works. And there are truly no wars or conflicts? No, mainly because a highly evolved being shares everything he has and would give you anything you sought to take by force. He does this out of his awareness that everything belongs to everyone anyway, and that he can always create more of what he gave away if he really desires it. There is no concept of ownership or loss in a society of Hebes who understand that they are not physical beings, but beings being physical. They also understand that all beings proceed from the same source, and thus we are all one. I know you said this before, but even if someone was threatening a Hebe with his life, there would still be no conflict? There would be no argument. He would simply lay down his body, literally leaving the body there for you. He would then create another body if he chose to, by coming into physicality again as a fully formed being, or returning as the newly conceived offspring of a loving pair of other beings. This is by far the preferred method of re-entry into physicality, because no one is more honored in highly evolved societies than a newly created offspring, and the opportunities for growth are unparalleled. Hebes have no fear of what your culture calls death, because Hebes know that they live forever, and it is just a matter of what form they are going to take. Hebes can live in a physical body, usually indefinitely, because a Hebe has learned to take care of the body and the environment. If for some reason having to do with the physical laws of a Hebe's body is no longer functional, a Hebe simply leaves it, joyfully returning its physical matter to the all that is for recycling, what you would understand as dust into dust. Okay, let me go back a bit. I know you said there are no laws as such, but what if someone does not behave according to the triangular code? Then what? Kaboom? No, no kaboom. There is no trial or punishment, just a simple observation of what's so and what works. It is carefully explained that what's so, what the being has done, is now at variance with what works, and that when something does not work for the group, it ultimately will not work for the individual, because the individual is the group, and the group is the individual. All Hebes get this very quickly, usually early in what you would call youth, so it is extremely rare that a mature Hebe found to act in a way that produces a what so that is not what works. But when one does, he's simply allowed to correct his mistake. Using the triangular code, He is first made aware of all the outcomes related to something he has thought or said or done, and then he's allowed to assess and declare his role in producing those outcomes. Finally, he's given an opportunity to take responsibility for those outcomes by putting corrective or remedial or healing measures into place. Well, what if he refuses to do so? A highly evolved being would never refuse to do so. It's inconceivable. He would then not be a highly evolved being, and you are now talking about a different level of sentient being altogether. Where does a Hebe go to learn all this stuff? In school? There is no school system in a Hebe society, merely a process of education by which offspring are reminded of what's so and what works. Offspring are raised by elders, not by those who conceive them, though they are not necessarily separated from their parents during the process, who may be with them whenever they wish and spend with as much time with them as they choose. In what you would call school, actually best translated as learning time, offspring set their own curriculum, choosing which skills they would like to acquire, rather than being told what they are going to have to learn. Motivation is thus at its highest level, and life skills are acquired quickly, easily, and joyfully. The triangular code, these are not really codified rules, but this is the best term one can find in your languages. It's not something which is pounded into the young Hebe, but something which is acquired, almost by osmosis, through the behaviors modeled for the child by the adults. Unlike your society, in which adults model behaviors opposite to those which they want their children to learn, in highly evolved cultures, adults understand that children do what they see others doing. It would never occur to Hebes to place their offspring for many hours in front of a device that shows pictures of behaviors they'd like their offspring to avoid. Such a decision would be to a Hebe incomprehensible. It would equally be incomprehensible if a Hebe did do this to then deny the pictures had anything to do with their offspring's sudden aberrant behaviors. I will say again that the difference between Hebe society and human society breaks down to one really simple element, which we should call truthful observation. In Hebe societies, beings acknowledge everything they see. In human societies, many deny what they see. They see television ruining their children and they ignore it. They see violence and losing as being entertainment, and they deny the contradiction. They observe that tobacco harms the body and pretend that it does not. They see a father who is drunken and abusive, and the whole family denies it, letting no one say a word about it. They observe over thousands of years. Their religions have failed utterly to change mass behaviors, and they deny this too. They see clearly that their governments do more to oppress than to assist, and they ignore it. They see a healthcare system that is really a disease care system, spending 1/10 of its resources on preventing its disease and 9/10 on managing it, and deny that profit motive is what stops any real progress on educating people in how to act and eat and live in such a way that promotes good health. They see that the eating of flesh of animals that have been slaughtered after having been force-fed chemical-laden foods is not doing their health any good, yet they deny what they see. Well, they do more than that. They try to sue talk show hosts who even dare to discuss the subject. You know, there's a wonderful book that explores the whole food topic with exquisite insight. It's called Diet for a New America by John Robbins. Yes, and people will read that book and deny that it makes any sense, and that is the point. Much of your race lives in denial. They deny not just the painfully obvious observations of everyone around them, but the observations of their own eyes, They deny their personal feelings and eventually their own truth. Highly evolved beings, which some of you are becoming, deny nothing. They observe what's so. They see clearly what works. Using simple tools, life becomes simple. The process is honored. Yes, but how does the process work? To answer that, I have to make a point that I have made before repeatedly. In fact, in this dialogue, everything depends on who you think you are and what you are trying to do. If your objective is to live a life of peace, joy, and love, violence does not work. This has already been demonstrated. If your objective is to live a life of good health and great longevity, consuming dead flesh, smoking known carcinogens, drinking volumes of nerve-deadening, brain-frying liquids does not work. This has already been demonstrated. If your objective is to raise offspring free of violence and rage, putting them directly in front of vivid depictions of violence and rage for years does not work. This has already been demonstrated. If your objective is to care for the earth and wisely husband her resources, acting as if these resources are limitless does not work. This has already been demonstrated. If your objective is to discover and cultivate a relationship with a loving God so that religion can make a difference in the affairs of humans, then teaching of a God of punishment and terrible retribution does not work. This too has already been demonstrated. Motive is everything. Objectives determine outcomes. Life proceeds out of your intention. Your true intention is revealed in your actions, and your actions are determined by your true intention. As with everything in life and life itself, it is a circle. Hebes see the circle. Humans do not. Hebes respond to what is so. Humans ignore it. Hebes tell the truth always. Humans too often lie, to themselves as well as others. Hebes say one thing and do what they say. Humans say one thing and do another. Deep down you know something is wrong, that you intended to go to Seattle, but you are in San Jose. You see the contradictions in your behaviors, and you are truly ready now to abandon them. You see clearly both that it is so and what works, and you are becoming unwilling to further to support divisions between the two. Your race is awakening. Your time of fulfillment is at hand. You need not be discouraged by what you have heard here, for the groundwork has been laid for new experience, a larger reality, and all of this is merely preparation for it. You are now ready to step through the door. This dialogue in particular has been intended to throw open that door. First, to point to it. See, there it is. For the light of truth will forever show the way, and the light of truth is what you have been given here. Take this truth now and live it. Hold this truth now and share it. Embrace this truth now and treasure it forevermore. For in these 3 books, the Conversations with God trilogy, I have spoken to you again of what is so. There is no need to go further. There is no need to ask more questions or hear more answers or satisfy more curiosities or provide more examples or offer more observations. All you need in order to create the life you desire, you have found here in this trilogy as presented so far. There is no need to go further. Yes, you have more questions. Yes, you have more but what ifs. Yes, you are not done yet with this exploration, we have enjoyed, because you are never done with any exploration. It is clear this book could go on forever, and it will not. Your conversation with God will, but this book will not. For the answer to any other question you should ask will be found here in this complete trilogy. All we can do now is repeat, re-amplify, return to the same wisdom over and over again. Even this trilogy has an exercise in that. There is nothing new here, but simply ancient wisdom revisited. It is a good visit. It is good to become familiar once again. This is the process of remembrance of which I have so often spoken. You have nothing to learn. You have only to remember. So revisit this trilogy often. Turn its pages time and time again. When you have a question that you feel has not been answered here, read the pages over. You will find your question has been answered. Yet if you really feel it has not, then seek your own answers. Have your own conversation. Create your own truth. In this, you will experience who you really are.
Whoa.
Thank you, Linda.
Absolutely. Thank you. My hair was standing on end on my arms this last couple pages. And there's so many things going on here. And you do such a great job of reading. And it pulls us in further, I think.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, there's one thing that really jumped out to me while I was reading where, and I didn't mark it at the time, but where God was talking about when someone isn't getting it, that they're given again the opportunity to get it, and they keep giving the opportunity to get it. And I've been doing a lot of work with astrology these past couple of weeks because of this eclipse that's coming. And I've been analyzing the chart of the eclipse, the chart of our country, and the chart of the president. And when I was reading that section today, I just feel like that is the opportunity that this eclipse is bringing, not just to the country, but specifically to this specific president. It's like he's being given an opportunity, and the country,
For
You're
whatever.
cutting out, Linda.
Yeah, you're cutting out.
that we all. Oh, that's too bad, because I'm on a cell phone, so I don't know what it's doing. But just that we're all one, and that this eclipse is part of that opportunity to crack open and realize that we're all one. I'm done.
I agree. And I think there's, I mean, the Hebe society of beings, I mean, it's like a utopia. And that though we are not there on this planet right now, God recognizes that some of us are trying. And thank God, no pun intended, we're allowed to make mistakes because there really are no mistakes, because it helps us go further on our journey. And one of the things early on in the chapter, and thank you, Linda, because I think what you just said made a lot of sense. And sometimes I have to laugh because tomorrow's a new day and there'll be another weird thing that was said, and I'll be like, ah! But this too shall pass. But when God says, or Neil says, yes, but you've danced away from my question. I asked you if Jesus was a spaceman, and I think you know what I mean. I mean, was he a being from outer space, or was he born here on Earth? And God says, your question once again assumes either or. Think outside the box. Reject either or and consider both and. And it was so funny because all of a sudden I thought about, as many of you know, my biological father died when I was 8 years old. And my mom was teaching myself and my younger siblings that our Father was with us always, that he was in our hearts and he would watch out for us, and he was always going to be part of our lives. And then I remember being taught in school, Catholic school, which they were trying to undo what my mother was telling me or telling us. I thought about Judgment Day, where if people were laying around in boxes or cremains, and that's where they remained until Judgment Day. And I had such a hard time with that. And when God said, consider both and I wish somebody would have said that to me when I was a young child, so I could have said both and, because that is what it is, both and. I mean, I can be being taught something that I personally don't believe, that we lay around in a box till Judgment Day, but I'm not going to go to hell in a handbasket because there's no hell. And I think there are so many things that, where God says, Jesus sought to lead by example. That is why he said, and this was so profound to me, that is why he said, I am the way and the life, follow me. He didn't mean follow me in the sense that you would all become his followers, but in the sense that you would all follow his example and become one with God. And I think that is so critically important for people, and I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but for people who think if they can recite the Bible from cover to cover in verse, doesn't mean that means you're a Christian. And a professor told me at the end of this class that to be a Christian is to live the life of that person called Jesus Christ. And that's what God's saying right here, is follow his example and become one with God. Over.
Religion's done little to help us.
It really has. And I wouldn't say it hasn't done anything to help people, because I think there is some that does. But I think the way you put it is it's done little is more accurate. Alton, were you going to say something? Oh, you're on mute or something. We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Alan, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
He was unmuted. We still couldn't hear him.
Oh.
Nanette, you can't do it?
I unmute. Okay.
There.
Still can't hear you.
There you go.
There you go.
How's that? I keep reducing technology here. I'm down to basic miracle computer stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Cool. Say something. So, 3 words. S-O, so, me, thing. Okay? And yeah, that's the poetry in my soul. So what else am I also saying to us that's relevant? Oh my goddess. You know, do you find when you're reading Conversations with God books, any of them, lovely, wonderful reading, Linda, thank you so much, by the way, that it's on, there was a reference made to it towards the end. If you really think you need an answer to a question that deeply, you will find it in a reread. I wonder if in space and time and reality, even our perception forms to the new awareness of what the incredible words in CWG can give us. Oh my God, it's just so wonderful. And then I'm going to focus in on what Linda said, because yeah, there's been some intense energies astrologically and et cetera, and opening up. Yeah, we listened to something about our shadow side recently, and you know, incorporate the shadow side, incorporate the dualism of hot, cold, happy, sad. You know, right now I feel for you with those trees. I have lots of tree experiences of similar depth, right? And yet I'm thinking in my soul, okay, feel those feelings, but we had have rain here for the first time, and I don't want to exaggerate, less than 8 weeks. It's been droughty, very, very droughty in the interior of BC near the Idaho border. Really, really droughty. And I even live in an area that has mountains that play with the clouds and create rain more often, but no. And so we had our first rain today. Thank you for listening to me, ladies. I'd love to hear what you all have to say too.
Well, it is just a miracle. And am I repeating here? Is there an echo?
Not for us.
Okay. Yeah, it's like there's this mass awakening going on at this time in our evolution as to the miraculousness of all of life, right? And really, that you can talk to something the size of your hand and it'll answer you is a miracle. And yeah, the unity and the oneness, the separation and duality, it's become so apparent that it's not working. And I'm grateful, Linda, that you have been working with astrology because of the lunar and the solar eclipse. And hopefully this will be an opportunity. There's so much going on globally that is dysfunctional that if we don't take advantage of these energies and these opportunities, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. Like the earth is, look at Nanette, your weather. This 2017 is the warmest year on record. The storm that you experienced, Nanette, last week, Edmonton experienced it the week before, Shabana. You were there, I know. On the one hand, when I'm with this group and with Humanity's team, I am determined to not give up and to remain positive. And, my worry isn't going to help anything, but staying positive and believing that I am a miracle and that I have more power than I've ever been programmed to believe, I think adds to the light of the world. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for this group.
Right back at you, Christine. And I would, if you can hang on for a few more minutes, everybody. This was a long chapter. Because Sarah has asked Alton in the chat room or chat window. It says, Alton, please, could you say more about what you understand by so, me, thing? You got to get off mute again.
The plug there.
There you
That
go.
probably got me off mute
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
Well, that's something. You know what? In a sense, Sarah, I think you're asking me to extemporaneously create a poem. Okay, if I can spell that, that'll be a poem in itself, but I'm not going to. All right, yes, I just got tripped into some notes I took from the wonderful reading today, right? They see what is and say what's so. We see what is and say what's so. And so, well, make it so, right? So, me is the thing that in unison with uses can make us come to see and be. Do you see that reversed? So that's something, okay? And that's about all I have to say about something. Thank you for your beautiful question. I hope that was entertaining and insightful, but hey, one or the other is good enough.
Yep. It almost sounded like, okay, now I'm going to put you back on mute. It almost sounds like something that JFK said is, or maybe it was Robert. I see things and say, or you see things and say why. I see things and say why not. Something to that nature. And that's kind of what's going on here. So
that's both and. I know I'm interrupting and you can hug
no, that's
me
okay. No, that's okay.
Both and, my dear.
That is.
At the same time, I'm even theorizing this idea, does both and, do both polar extremes make up what we're thinking of as quantum physics in some elements of quantum physics? Because quantum physics is comprehensive, it's all-encompassing in a manner of speaking, right? As long as we give the goddess her loving due.
I agree. And
wow.
No worries on the interruption, because Lord knows I can go on. Anybody else want to add something? Well, I'm going to throw something out there. God is talking about, you have attached guilt and shame to those labels, right? Meaning about right and wrong. Concepts equally foreign to Hebes, and you have labeled an astonishing number of things wrong, not because they don't work, but simply because you imagine them to be inappropriate. Sometimes not even your eyes, but in the eyes of God. You have thus constructed artificial definitions of what works and what doesn't. And definitions have nothing to do with what is really so. And then down a couple paragraphs, God says, it would be impossible in any event because a Hebe receives vibes, actual vibrations from other beings, which make their feelings plain enough. Just as you can sometimes feel the air when you walk into a room, a Hebe can feel what another Hebe is thinking and experiencing. And I'm going to interrupt myself there, because I think, though you can converse here and argue with me, not like argue, but I think that's what empaths are about. People that can walk in a room and have somebody sitting next to you, you don't know quite what it is, but you haven't spoken 2 words, but you know something, and they're not crying, they're not giving you any hints, but you can tell something is really wrong, and there's no words. And anyway, then when God on the next page says, this is especially true between loved ones, emphasizing a major truth, that caring creates communication. And then I wondered if emphasizing, which I'm not going to take up the time on this call, I will do it afterwards, comes from the word empath in any way. Over. I am really going to ask everybody to please reread this chapter before we come together next week, because I think there's a lot more to discuss here. And I'm leaving my book open so that I cannot forget, right here on my desk, to reread it, because there's so many powerful things. And I was thinking, this would be a chapter, not in my book because I write all over my book, but this would be a chapter that I wouldn't mind leaving here and there for Awakening Day, because I just think it's so powerful. And maybe it's not the whole chapter, but that part when you were starting to choke up at the end, Linda, and the last couple pages, I swear, I was looking at my arms because my hair were literally standing on end, because your reading was very good and the words were wow. Anybody want to give a last word?
Gratitude.
And peace.
Peace too.
Yep. Well, I love you all, and
Love you too.
thank you, everybody. And oh, no wonder Linda wasn't answering me. She's not on the call anymore. But anyway, we'll meet next week, same time. And I'm really, really happy, as usual, to be with this group of people. And Alton, we welcome you in as the male. Sometimes we have some other men on the call, but yeah, we'll just embrace you.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody, love you all, and we will see each other next Sunday.
Bye.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.